I finally got away. I finally got to a point where I can get this more concise without actually doing a episode by episode breakdown. And my feelings for the series have gotten a little bit more complicated, if that's fair. Overall, I'd highly recommend The Witcher. It's one of those shows that blends the best of nerddom. Does a very good job of highlighting that badass payoff moment for its main characters, while building a world that just kind of sets the tone for them's the break, take it or leave it. Now, the reason I abandoned the episode by episode breakdown is because there are much better channels that are doing deep dives with the research and all that into The Witcher that can actually get you into cinematography, how to better tell a story, the whole nine. So this is strictly an opinion piece. One click over to Rotten Tomatoes can see that the show's kind of struggling with professional critics, but the audience seems to love it. Like in love. So more specifically, this video is an opinion piece about the divide on the reception of The Witcher and if the series is good or bad. Starting with the good. It's a fantasy highlighting a time of magic, sorcerers, and monsters, all of which collide in a fictional land of the continent. The continent is reminiscent of medieval Europe, full of knights, villages living in tragedy, and all the things that track well with a Western audience. This show has been likened to Game of Thrones. However, there is really no comparison other than the setting. The show allows itself to have fun in its setting while still tackling some social commentary. Effectively, this show was able to responsibly gloss over social commentary and racial inclusion without letting the story be too bogged down in shaming its audience. The casting of Geralt is perfect, with Henry Cavill, aka Superman, bringing any fan of Witcher lore to drool over this beautiful man. Geralt steals the screen and leaves you begging for more of the stories for a longer duration. His gruff voice, his brutality, his complex morality. Oh my God, Henry Cavill kills this role. Yennefer. Now, I kinda had to eat my words on Yennefer. After used to the physical representation of the video games, I was wanting more of a stern, warlike goddess to represent Yennefer. An intimidating Nordic physicality, which there seems to be a plethora of actors that could obtain the look. Literally any female lead from the show Vikings. But damn, Anya Charlotta? Damn, she sold me and the audience on her portrayal of Yennefer, hands down. Giving her flaws and a backstory that made you root for her callousness. Sort of the same way audience treat all these shows with attractive serial killers. Yennefer, in her worst of times, is taken with a bit of context, making you almost root for her ruthlessness. I would say it's one of the best female leads in fantasy. Ciri. That's all I got to say for Ciri. The supporting cast makes it seem criminal that they didn't get a bigger role. Queen Calanthe needs more lines and more of that charming delivery. Dandy, goddammit, Jasker. Guys, it's not gonna stick. It don't feel right in my soul. I come from the games, bros, ain't right? But oh boy, doesn't matter how much exposition he goes through in a really small amount of time, he hit the world with that bop.
Toss a coin to your Witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty, oh.
Visually, I have to give the showrunner credit. She tried her hand at hitting the highlights of the novels while rewarding the audience with the visuals that gamers were used to. Most of the stories we were exposed to were standouts from the books. Now, back to that Rotten Tomatoes score that I mentioned before. You can see the divide between the audience and legitimate critics. It seems in bold fashion these days, the audience is very direct in what it wants from a series, and the small vocal few and media seem to go an entirely different route. I say what they tolerate for good fantasy and good show is completely different. Looking at this tweet from Lauren, the showrunner herself sees most critics who had given the thumbs down mostly had a motive. Either the show didn't stand on social issues, highlighted sexism by keeping accurate with medieval Europe settings, or had those who just wanted to see the series fail. Personally, I'm glad that the showrunner stood her ground, and that the showrunner, the creatives, and the audience stuck together on a united front. Usually this is when there's like a weird divide in the audience, and it seems like that's capitalized on to kill the show. This time, with so much support for it, I mean, you can't really kill a moneymaker, which makes me ultimately happy that the show's been highlighted for a season 2 and even a season 3. So we get to see more Witcher. It's a win-win. However, sometimes the mob of positivity tries to drown out valid criticism. And boy, there is a ton of valid criticism. How this show approached narration was by throwing multiple timelines at the audience with one or two clues within exposition of what was going on. The first clue there was multiple timelines came in episode 1, during Queen Calinthy's dinner and Rimfi's explanation. Calinthy and Ciri argue, and it is brought to the audience's attention that she had won a great battle at the same age as Ciri. While in the next scene, during a heated exchange with Rimfi and Geralt, it is stated that the battle just happened. This is well over 25 minutes into the episode. Like, I'm not joking about that. 25 minutes in, it was expected to catch these little hints. I've seen so many comments that this was enough to correctly portray that there were multiple timelines, but I mean, I know you like The Witcher, but come on, bro. This still made the editing choice cringeworthy as you are left trying to catch up. A problem that, as the episodes continue, become less of an issue, admittedly. When the three main characters start to intertwine, the jump cuts get less jarring and the storytelling more fulfilling. Which leads to my next criticism. This whole show counts on you already being a Witcher stan. You already need to have a plethora of knowledge of the lore. The amount of exposition needed to validate scenes gets crazy sometimes. The amount of terms that are thrown at you that are actually important parts of lore and help explain a lot of characters' motivations are just skimmed through. Time skips are incohesive as the only reference to the amount of time passed are vague statements of living a lifetime or when you're as old as I am. Even when the series ends, you still have no idea where they are on the continent relative to other places, or how much time has passed. There are times where it is hinted that Jaskier, a normal bard or human, has stayed youthful along with Geralt through the decades if we compare the timeline with Yennefer, who is living centuries. There's just no way to know. Unless you are a person who read the books, played the games, or visited a wiki. Once you visit those external sources, you start to see that some of the episodes, some of the adventures are crazy out of order. Once you realize this, you start questioning why the showrunner, directors, or whoever made this decision chronologically framed the episodes in this way. And I have a hot take. My personal take is they wanted to highlight the female experience. I already know this is going to get me killed, but give me a shot and then kill me. This is not going to be one of those I hate feminist rant things. This is just purely critical of the show. In The Last Wish, the book started with the story of King Foltest and his incestuous relationship with his sister. This story involved the best parts of Geralt. It was used to show how curt he is, how complex his morality is, the hardships he faces, the powers he has at his disposal, how potions work, and the cruelty of the era. However, the stories the series started with was one that in the books only had weight because of this story. The purpose it looks like Rimfi served was to clearly exonerate Yennefer and Ciri's character, stating early that these women were the way they were because in the way the world made them, Rimfi served as Geralt's backbone to his morality and how he saw how he should change and view the world and help from that point on. Showing the brooch to Foltest and saying that that was his motivation and whatnot. It changed the order just enough. Rimfi served as foreshadowing for the rest of the story, not just for Yennefer, but Ciri as well, as she kept reciting the Destiny bit. Ciri, who was a brat in the books, is now a product of being royalty and learned her lesson fast, attempting to destroy the myth that these princess types exist. Yennefer, who plays with the dark side often, is now exonerated in her questionable choices that take place in the future. Oddly enough, Geralt has no explanation to his issues because as the other characters had to have their motivations clearly depicted so they would not fall into the tropes and be considered in totality for the decisions in later stories. Geralt is still the brooding Fabio tragic white knight gigolo. This trope works for audiences, the Jon Snow type. Yennefer seems to be the series' main protagonist. At times, the amount of screen time she gets is crazy. The amount of past love interest expositions at Artusa that's covered compared to Geralt, it's a little weird. You often forget it's Witcher because Anya is so dynamic in this role. But still, the short stories involved in The Last Wish were skipped or rushed through. And there is a story in The Last Wish that involves a love-stricken werewolf that I don't think we're gonna get to see anymore just because it's gone, which kind of shows how Geralt's attitude towards monsters are. I mean, they kind of rush through it in the episode with the Golden Dragon, but that story really showed the dynamic of where Geralt's head is at when it comes to taking these jobs to destroy monsters who he doesn't exactly always see that deserve to be slayed. The costume design sometimes snaps you out of immersion. The wig on Geralt will snap you out of any mysticism that's going on in that show. It is bad. Sometimes. It kind of seems like he grew into it later on and like it looked a little bit more natural. Like it almost seems like they shot the first episode a little later on when you had longer hair. I don't know, you tell me. All this makes it seem like the series takes itself serious 1 minute and then doesn't give a fuck the next. This is one criticism I agree with, but I kind of like it. I didn't want another Game of Thrones. I wanted a fantasy I can get into. Still, if someone wasn't into it, I would completely understand. Which kind of brings me to the head of this whole divide between audiences. The way I see it, the audience kind of splits into 3 groups. There are the types that like Star Wars, The Last Jedi. The types that don't really care about the story, they care about the visuals and how appealing it is and how digestible information can be. To them, that's the definition of a complete product. Like, that's all it needs to be, which is kind of valid. Entertainment is entertainment. So if you're entertained by it, it really doesn't matter the interesting bits that go in. 2, fans of the books. People who read books or manga, in my experience, they just want other people to enjoy the recommendation. They like the reason they pick up on these books and spur the movement of whatever media that is to go on is because they really love the art, the pacing, the characters that went into it. And for that reason, these people are happy with the show as long as it stays like 70% faithful to the books. And I know a lot of people who read the books had a little issue getting into the game adaptation because they felt that it had branched too far from their original story, which I understand. That crowd, from mostly what I see, is fairly sated with what's going on. 3, fans of the games. These people just want a good game adaptation for one thing. We don't want any more Tomb Raider. We don't want any more Doom. They need to stop and make something good for one. But these 3 are ultimately one type of fan. Those that enjoy the media and are willing to forgive even a lot of mistakes for the overall vision. Something I agree with. That is always how I think you should look at somebody else's art. You have to forgive their adaptation to it, for the most part. But in the explanations I just gave, you have to realize that you're overlooking flaws. You are overlooking flaws. To watch this and overlook the shoddy editing, lack of explanation, the weird time of exposition, the posturing, the costume designs, you have to be crazy. And to look at somebody else who is watching this for the first time, a new adapter, and they're seeing all of these obvious flaws, and they give it a thumbs down, you can't really be mad. As the audience, you just have to put your money forth so that it continues, so that, you can get your slice of pie out of it. I know the show Vikings should be bigger than it is. It should be way bigger than it is, but it has enough of a core audience to go on. And the show, they keep making the show for that core audience, so it's fine. I see a lot of heat towards valid criticism. This could be better. If anything, if they didn't have viral success, I liken it to the Drake Scorpio album. Without that Kiki, do you love me? Without that writing alongside with the album, it would have flopped. It would have failed. But this show has a lot of viral success in that it's memeable. The tunes are bopping. So I asked the audience, if you have to put on such rose-colored glasses to overlook the pitfalls of the show, are you really liking it, or are you tiptoeing around bias? And to critics, if an artist makes something that the audience absolutely loves, and you're the 1% minority that's trying to say it's bad, maybe you're a stick in the mud. I don't know. Either way, watch The Witcher. As always, thanks for watching. Love actually talking about something Witcher related or video game related that's relevant. Like, subscribe, peace.